Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday evening Ask the Doc call. My name is Lynn Matthews, and it is always such a pleasure being here on Tuesday evenings, talking about a revolutionary approach to health and vitality. For the last century, we've pretty much focused on symptoms, right? And trying to address and mitigate symptoms, which can sometimes work, but sometimes it leads to more problems, and we never address the root of the problem. Redox is changing that. It is literally shifting the entire paradigm of how we approach health, wellness, and vitality. And if that's a new term for you, you are in wonderful company tonight. It was for everyone on this call until someone like your friend told us about it and invited us to come and get educated about it. But just know that redox is the energy that powers all life. Nothing happens in my body, your pet's body, even plants, without a redox reaction. It is the most complex communication system in the world. It protects your healthy cells, and it helps you find, detect, repair, and replace any cells that are damaged literally anywhere in the body. It's quite remarkable. So tonight we're going to explore not only what is redox, but also, why is it so profound? Why is it such a big discovery? And why should you care, right? What's in it for you? People look at this for a number of reasons, and you might see yourself in more than one reason. But most people look at this because they have a health challenge, or maybe there's someone they care about that has a health challenge. And they're trying to find out, could this be part of the solution, right? Is this the missing link? Other people look at this because they like to be proactive with their health, try to kind of interrupt the breakdown of aging for as long as they can, right? And the things that come along with that. And still others are looking at this because they've heard somewhere that there's an athletic benefit to this. And although there are high-level athletes, professional athletes, even Olympic athletes using this, you don't need to be an athlete to want more endurance, more sharper, mental focus, and faster recovery. All of us could benefit from that, right? Just in day-to-day living and really enjoying our life and the things that we love to do. And another reason that people look at this is the anti-aging benefit. We are all getting older. We can't stop that. Time marches on, as they say. But what if there was a way to interrupt that breakdown of aging, both in what we see in the mirror when we look at ourselves over time, but also, and I think more importantly, all that aging that's going on at a cellular level, your cells, your organs, your organ systems. What if we could find a way to interrupt that breakdown? And we're going to talk about that tonight as well. The other reason that people talk about or look at this, and unfortunately, we don't have as much time to go in it on Tuesday nights, but when you have a breakthrough of this magnitude that literally can impact every single person on the planet, there is an opportunity to make an impact in the world beyond the impact you've already made in your lifetime with your career. And if that's something that resonates with you, maybe it resonates with you now before you even have tried this because you understand what this is. But many people, after they've tried it and have an experience, they start thinking about people they care about. And if that's something that is of interest to you, what it's like to be part of this amazing team of people, educating people around the world about this and really making a difference in humanity, then talk to the person that brought you. Okay, they can give you some more information beyond what we're going to talk about tonight, or come on Saturday morning when Dr. Hoffman's colleague, Dr. David Silverman, he does on the same Zoom, same password at 10:30 East Coast time. He'll take a half hour and talk about, best usage, how to get the most from the products. But then at the top of the hour, we kind of switch gears, and he works with Danielle Matthews, who happens to be my daughter, but they're going to talk about the business aspect of this. What is it like to really share this, be a force for good in the world, and really make a difference in people's lives? So tonight, like I said, we're going to be focusing on this amazing technology called Redox. And I'm really excited that I am always here most nights with Dr. Carolyn Hoffman, who is just a dear friend and colleague. She's in Charlottesville, Virginia. She's been using this technology for quite some time, and she has been on the medical board for this company for quite some time. She is a traditional naturopath for more than 23 years. And what's really wonderful, I think, about Tuesday nights and working with Carolyn, what she's bringing to the table here, is not only her 20 plus years as a medical professional, but being able to kind of peek behind the scenes at what this technology is and what these products are that have come out of that, all that research, is really a gift that we get to take advantage of in some ways on Tuesday nights. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Let me just swap over the screens here. Perfect. Well, thank you. I always enjoy being with everybody each week to hopefully impart to you the reason why we think that this is such an important thing that everybody not only needs to know about, but we hope by the end of it that you kind of feel like we do, that this really is very much a common sense thing that we should all be employing in our life as a whole. To me, as I very frequently will say, this is the single most influential product technology I've had the privilege to work with. And I've had hundreds of different products that I've used in my own practice. But there is nothing that does what this does, because there is nothing else on the market that has redox signaling molecules. And so we're going to kind of unwrap for you what that can mean for you. And hopefully you'll feel like by the time we get to the end of this, you'll be saying, absolutely, this needs to be part of my life just as much as eating good food, drinking great water, doing exercise, and all the other things that we do to maintain health as a whole. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll go to full screen there. Lynn, I think that that's okay. Hopefully you can give me a thumbs up if it's not. Perfect. And what we're going to talk about, when I first started looking at this, as I was delving into and trying to work out, exactly what was this technology and why was it different from vitamins and minerals and CBD oils or essential oils or homeopathy. I was kind of going through the whole gambit of things that I knew and trying to establish, did I really need this? Was it really that unique? But I'd seen some really powerful things happen for my husband, who'd not been able to really exercise and breathe adequately for 22 years. And we had tried all of the different things that had come along in that time and never really found the key to get him out of that space and not have to have supportive technologies. But when we saw this amazing shift with him within a 2-week period of using it, I had to say to myself, okay, so what is this? Why is this one thing making such a huge change for him when all the other things we'd done had not done that? And I really started to then delve in and read a bit more about the science and try to work out, still was this that significant? There's a certain amount of skepticism in my mind for sure, and you may well feel like that at the beginning of your learning journey. But as I read more, I began to think to myself, I wonder if this is the missing link. And I thought that because you're probably like most of us, and certainly in my journey through nutrition with my clients, that very often we can find ourselves using a huge amount of different products, physical products that very often come in kind of capsule forms, or tablets, and we're going to have to ingest those, break them down, digest them, and actually deliver them to the cells to be able to get the benefit. But I think very often we can be taking a huge amount of those things and really still not reaching the goal that we're looking for. And so as I read the science, I started to think, well, I wonder if this is the missing link. Is this the thing that could pull together all of those other things that we do, whatever they are, and really empower anything else that we're doing to work better? It truly is that, and I know it now, but it is this missing link because it's not any of those things. It's really all about this amazing conversation that our body is naturally designed with so that our cells can talk within themselves and between themselves. And it is this piece that puts together health, youth, vitality, and you may not have heard of it, as most of us haven't, until we come to this kind of conversation. But I'm going to show you that it's not new, it's just new to us. And why is it not new? Well, because this whole area actually started back in 1998, the first of 6 Nobel Prizes that lead the field of where health science is going, because these signals are in every cell and therefore they affect every part of the body. This had ushered in this whole new way of looking at medicine and certainly trying to make drugs out of it. But we're not going to talk about a drug, and that doesn't even exist in this field at this point. So redox is not new. It's just been studied for decades, and it is the critical force behind every single function of the human body. You just get some of the example of a tiny little scratch at the surface of all the places around the world that are studying this field of science and trying to make some kind of drug version of it. Well, I am sure that probably the one thing we can all agree on tonight is that your health is everything. And I want to tell you that your health is inside you, but sometimes it's hiding in plain sight. And it starts with our cellular health. Well, why is that? Well, because we have 70 to 100 trillion cells that make up the human body. They form every organ system that makes us as humans. And so cellular health basically is not only just cellular health, but also cellular dis-ease is found within any of our cells. And we are often only really aware of the shifts that are taking place below the surface, so to speak, like that visual image of, what might represent the human body with that iceberg. All of the work and the things that are changing that we aren't aware of are underneath the surface until they become enough of a problem that they push up above the surface. They have a whole bunch of symptoms that gather our attention, and then our doctor gives us some kind of title that goes with it. It's just a title that represents some dysfunction in certain cells. And so when they push up hard enough, that's when we do something about it. But it's been going on somewhere for quite some time. Now, these signals that are basically keeping guard on healthy cells or damaged cells are really done through this signaling carrier called redox signaling molecules. It's the language of how the human body communicates. Think of redox signaling, for example, as the Wi-Fi system for our human body. They are this invisible network which is happening across the human system that connects our cells together. And when everything's working, just like a Wi-Fi, right, we have this fabulous communication. But, when things don't happen, and we're all very familiar with what a spotty Wi-Fi looks like in our life, within the human body, it's where the repair process begins to break down. We create a lot more damaged cells as a result of it. When that happens, the body is less capable of fighting inflammation, and we are certainly less capable of recovering as quickly as we should do. If you heard that story that we started with, you can see an example of someone who actually decided to do blood work and could see those changes made before and after taking some additional redox. So our cells are sending signals to each other to fight stress, to help us to recover and to maintain and achieve balance, which is essentially health. Now, these signal carriers are made in something called the mitochondria, which you're probably familiar with, maybe from high school biology. There are hundreds and thousands of these packed in every single cell of the human body. They're the battery packs that produce the energy that enables us to function as human beings. With the moment they stop producing energy, everything falls apart. But they also make these things called redox signaling molecules. Now, imagine in your life, obviously trying to run your life on spotty Wi-Fi, right? The messages kind of go awry, the communication gets messed up, and eventually the whole system powers down. Well, pollution and processed foods that we might consume, poor sleep, and all of the kind of general stresses that we all experience as part of modern life really scramble our cellular communication. And when that happens, the cellular communication powers down, communication gets messy, and a whole bunch of things just don't happen the way that they should do when we have a full redox potential running. Now, if we add to that another area in which redox takes a hit, this is a natural loss of redox production from puberty. Not in our 30s and 40s, it's actually starting before anyone really thinks about getting older. And your cells just can't make enough redox signaling molecules. And so when that happens, the body is struggling all the time to maintain cellular health and just overall wellness. And we can feel that with age. We all know that things are changing. We don't recover as fast. We don't feel as mobile as we used to or as limber as we used to. Things begin to hurt a lot more. And that is, we just go, oh, well, we're getting older. But behind it all is this drop in redox signaling. Now, until 2009, there was literally nothing anybody could do about this. So we're going to talk about what we can do now to put ourselves in the driver's seat of our own health. And that intersection is where we bring about this conversation of Verdis Norton. We'll go into a deeper discussion at the end where Lynn will kind of put in perspective how important he is for the culture and the reasons why we're in the industry that we're in, as opposed to being in the pharmaceutical industry. This is where nature and pharmacy kind of intersects, thanks to Verdis Norton. This groundbreaking science, Verdis was responsible for having the vision that ensured 10 years of research that had considered being able to produce stabilized redox signaling outside the human body to be a total impossibility. Now, bioavailable stabilized redox signaling molecules in a non-toxic, safe product, which can impact literally every single cell in the human body in ways that vitamins and minerals and all those other products that we may consume cannot, is as a result of him having the vision to say, we've got 10 years of amazing research on something that's so powerful and that deserves to be brought to the market. He, like all of us, when he first encountered this technology, was super skeptical that how could you make anything valuable from salt and water, which is what the human body is doing, and we replicate this whole process. And so even to get involved in kind of looking at that original 10 years of publicly traded research, he had to go to people like Harvard and UCLA and University of Washington and Indiana to actually get proof that major research labs had validated what he was about to be involved in. If you want to know the full story, go to discoverredox.com and watch the ASEA Genesis story. We will talk about that, but it is always worth watching and listening to Verdis himself. Now, so as a result of his vision and his bringing together scientists to help to do the impossible, the world's first and only cell signaling supplement was actually created in 2009. It not only was the first supplement, but it created this whole new category of health. Nobody had ever created redox. Nobody knew what it was. They didn't really know what to do with it either. And it's really interesting to see how even to this day, even though we are in 37 different countries in the world, different markets look at us differently because we are not a traditional supplement with physical materials inside. In the United States, they kind of categorize us there because they don't have anywhere else to put us. So we come under the supplement industry rules. But in Europe, they think of us as a food. In Taiwan, they consider us a water. So we are categorized differently because we are the first people to create this whole industry of redox. We meet all sorts of amazing standards of production equal to drug manufacturing in terms of purity, consistency, and solubility, although that doesn't quite apply to us. We are FDA approved, GMP, halal, kosher, and we also meet all of the compliance necessary for Olympic athletes to be able to use our product. We have 7 patents, 1,000 trade secrets, and from our one facility where it's so highly protected with our 7 patents and trade secrets, we ship to every consumer all around the world in the 37 countries. So it's coming from that facility direct to each person's door. And we provide with it a 30-day money-back guarantee, in addition to independent third-party validation. So our product is consistently every 4th batch goes to overseas independent redox laboratories where they test it and prove and validate and stamp on the bottle. So you'll see that validation on the bottom of every bottle, that what we are purchasing is not salt and water. It is the transformed redox signaling molecules in a bioactive form. In other words, we guarantee that what we're purchasing is what we're getting. So for 15 years, ASEA has actually made products that contain the same redox signaling molecules as our bodies make. And that's the what we could think of as the most important product, because this one is going to work internally every single day to help the body combat the breakdown of aging that's happening from puberty, and that is essential if we want to maintain health and avoid the challenges that we all experience over time with age. And what they're going to do is to support cellular communication, which helps our body achieve balance and sustained health. I think it's really interesting that in 2016, there is a published study in Free Radical Biology and Medicine that confirmed some really important things that, for me, was one of the things that I looked at and I said, well, this is a no-brainer. This is as important as food and water and all the other things I'm going to do for my health. And it said three things. One, that we've already talked about, that redox changes with aging, we lose it. Two, that redox homeostasis, in other words, a really good, powerful amount of redox potential in balance, is essential for health. And three, maybe most important for any of us who are getting older in particular, that the longer we're out of redox balance, the more disease we have. So it's going to go away, even though it's in us. It's essential for us to stay healthy, and the more out of balance we are, the more likely we are to be sick. That, to me, made this an absolute no-brainer as to why I wanted it every day of my life. So redox signaling molecules, when we drink the liquid, is like the master molecules. This is the master switch for activating the whole keyboard of health, so to speak. In other words, it activates every single cell in the human body to raise that redox potential, to make it help those cells amplify communication and stay as healthy as we're possibly able to. I think of this as a broad spectrum product. That's often what we talk about because it hits all of the keys of the piano. And an example of why it's broad spectrum would be our double-blind placebo-controlled genetic study. This study showed some phenomenal outcomes. It took healthy 35-year-olds who, when they analyzed their genetic potential and their expression, it had already started to turn down. Well, that just simply reflects what we learned earlier, that we're losing redox from puberty. So they had less effective genetic expression. And they were put on 8 ounces a day for 8 weeks in the main study group. And 100% of them saw a 20 to 31% sustained and beneficial improvement in 5 genetic pathways. That's huge, 100%. So one of the things I take away from this study is, like, if this can affect 100% of people in that, it's not going to be any different for any of us, unless we don't happen to be part of the human race. But we're all the same in that way. So we know that we're going to get the same benefits if we were to consume this over that period of time. If we look at what that's going to mean, we're going to have improved immune system health. We're going to be able to maintain better cardiovascular health and support vein elasticity, a really important component. We're going to see improvements in gut health and digestive enzyme production. We're going to be able to support and modulate hormone balance that we will also heard in our earlier story this evening, and support vitality and wellness. And that something that is really key for everybody, especially over the last 4 years, is that we want to know that our cells are able to respond to external stressors. That can be pollution, that can be the foods that we eat, environmental toxins, but it also can be emotional, or it can be physical trauma, anything that's going to stress the system. The difference between whether we can overcome it or our neighbor does not, and maybe they succumb to bacteria and viruses, is how stress resilient our cells are. Super strong cells and stress resilient cells are going to keep us in a great place regardless of what we're being affected by. Well, here we know that we can support that and improve it with the use of ASEA Redox. And here we're going to help to maintain a healthy response to physical exercise from inflammation. Again, a target of that previous earlier conversation. And I always remind people that when it says physical exercise, that is not about being an athlete, that is simply being a human being, because movement creates oxidation, which creates inflammation. Now, if you're super skeptical about the saline piece, take a look here. That is also an incredibly unique response, 0% in genetic expression changes with the saline. I mentioned that the liquid is broad spectrum, and what made the common thing was that the human body is made up of 70 to 100 trillion cells. So whether it was my husband with his 22-year challenge with not being able to breathe and exercise, or a 30-year struggle to overcome 3 different autoimmune experiences for a client of mine, or maybe to reset long-term challenges with skin and hair, maybe to be able to reset the system so that instead of losing chunks and chunks of hair, like that interviewee, they were also told by their doctor that they no longer needed certain medications. Or maybe it's, being able to get back to skydiving in your 70s when you've had an injury to your foot and your hip, and you feel like the rest of your life is just going to be sitting around waiting to finish out whatever time you have here. What brings all of those different experiences together is that they are all simply an example of damaged cells somewhere in the body gathering up together and pushing above the surface like that iceberg and showing you that you've got a problem somewhere in the system that the body has not managed to fix. Broad spectrum application for skin can come with our Renew 28. This is the same as the liquid, except that we have a silica clay in it that helps us suspend that liquid in ways that we can put this clear gel onto the skin. It's called Renew 28 because as we apply it, you can see it's totally clear there. It's already working. It's about signaling, not absorption. But in our clinical studies, we know that we're going to turn over skin cells 16% faster in 28 days. What does that mean? It means we get younger looking, guys. That's why we love this stuff, right? And you can see examples of the before and after of changes in tone and texture, elasticity, calming irritation in the face, looking at those wrinkles that come over time through oxidation on the inside, which becomes evident on the outside. And so we have these 2 broad spectrum redox communication methods where we can improve everything on the inside with the liquid, and then we can support and prime all of the cells and the skin from the outside. Our most recent development, which has really only been on the market for a couple of weeks, is another project that, like the Renew 28, took 5 years to find something that wouldn't activate those signals. This is looking at the results of our genetic study where we said we have a 100% impact on genetic activation. And we looked at the inflammatory signaling pathway and said, how can we laser down those redox signaling messages and actually just play a certain chord on that piano keyboard and play the chord that relates to the inflammatory signaling messages? How can we help support the body in targeting that, because we know that this is behind so many challenges? Redox Gold is the 4-year research project that we've gone through, and it contains not simply redox signaling molecules, but this magic ingredient of infused molecular gold that helps to activate and laser the way we can use those signaling messengers to hit this pathway. And it does 2 things. It gives us this amazing relief benefit for things that hurt, right? Discomfort that we have, mobilization that maybe is not there, soreness and discomfort in the muscles, tightness, any of that kind of thing. But not simply relief, because we can go on the market and buy a lot of over-the-counter things like Icy Hot or BioFreeze, and that'll give some kind of relief because it cools down an area that's struggling with that inflammatory signaling messages. But here we're going to activate the cells on the inside to do what they know how to do, which is to heal. And therefore we get long-term recovery by repeated use of this to help the body recover that journey that's kind of stalled out somehow. Now, that is the targeting the NRF2 inflammatory gene signaling. So we're playing on specific notes to make sure that we get this really powerful message to help something that feels uncomfortable or maybe is bugging us, and we want to really fire hose that area on the outside and activate things on the inside. That inflammatory gene signaling pathway is just one door that opens up multiple pathways on the inside. So if we think of how we can fire hose and really trigger and laser onto that pathway with this, we are also supporting it from the inside, and we're activating all these other pathways with that inflammatory signaling message. Just look at what's in blue. If those things are good for you, you know that pathway is upregulated and it's doing its job beautifully. But if you are having any of those kinds of challenges, it's really a sign that that genetic pathway is downregulating from the inside. And this would be where you would want to avail yourself of the same benefit as that double-blind study. When we come to the ASEA Gold, there's some beautiful results that we can show you. They took a look at the NRF2 pathway, that inflammatory signaling, and they looked at the production of this inflammatory signaling message within a normal cell. This would be our control cell. When we added Redox Gold onto it, we saw a 160% increase in being able to produce that NRF2 that is going to combat that inflammatory pathway that is messing things up for a lot of us and is definitely behind why things are uncomfortable. But they went one step further and they said, let's look at glutathione. Glutathione is our master antioxidant as a result of that NRF2 expression. And we looked at a healthy cell and what it could produce in glutathione. With the production and the use of the Redox Gold, we increased that production by 70%. But here was a fascinating piece. They said, what if we take a healthy cell and we compromise it so it can make only 2% of its normal production of glutathione, and then we add the Redox Gold, what would happen? When they added the Redox Gold, we had a 280% increase in glutathione. In other words, we brought it back to 98% of normal function from a cell that basically was effectively completely incompetent at producing anything at all. We now get it back up to virtually normal. That's an enormous benefit. We went one step further and we said, what happens? How can we look at what's going on with heat within the body when we use one application of the Redox Gold? And so we use thermography. Thermography is very reliant in many industries for looking at the escape of heat. And here we can see this. This is a person actually sitting. You can see their thighs and their calves, their back and their hand. And anything that's up here at the top of the graph in the pale blue and the yellow and the reds and the pinks denotes amount of heat coming from the skin. And you can see that after we waited 15 minutes for our control period, which is what you do in science to eliminate any false positives for calming things down, we repeated those thermography studies. And you can see the difference in how much the Renew Gold is making a difference on calming down the system. You can certainly see this one in particular, I think, is pretty significant. You look at how much it's right down at the bottom here across that area and how red and pink it was here. And same in calming down this hand. Now, this is just 3 of the examples that were taken. We took a huge amount of them, and the person who invited you to the call can probably show you the others. But I think one of the important things to mention is that it was a 100% benefit that was seen. Lynn mentioned athletes who use our technology as a whole. This is a great resource for you to go and listen to all of the variety of stories that our athletes will share with you. The Redox has been studied extensively on athletes, particularly with the liquid and up until now with the Renew 28. And of course, we're already getting stories back on the Renew Gold or the Redox Gold. But the reason that they use it is because our studies show that it increases endurance and recovery by 32%. I like to just translate that to what's that going to mean for us, right? We're not necessarily Olympic athletes. We don't necessarily want to be. Maybe we're athletic and we might be a weekend warrior, or we're pretty serious about our athletics. But as I said, we all have to create energy to be alive. And if we can create 32% more endurance and faster recovery, what can that mean for maybe the things that we're beginning to lose the capacity to do with age and with time? One of the other benefits is that sharper mental acuity. You know, our brain is the hub for everything that's going to go on in the body. So we all need to keep a sharp brain as we age, because if we don't, there are a lot of things that begin to fall apart and don't do well. And we often then lose our capacity to be able to be in charge of our life and to be as mobile as we would want to be. It's really another good reason to start this at an earlier age, because these are all very young people seeing a sharper mental function as a process of it. So interrupt that aging process and make sure that as we get older, we still got really sharp brains that can help us engage in our life. If you look at this page, go and find on the click down, you'll see the athletes. Look for Sean Burke and click on him, and it'll take you to a huge number of experiences and stories from our athletes. I mentioned that we are the first and only people in the field of redox biology, and as a result, we've had to put hundreds of thousands of dollars of money into research to learn what it is that we created, because nobody else can teach us about this. And here's some examples over the years of the different studies that we've run that are helping us learn the power of redox, and also where we can go with this redox biology and where we can actually stretch and learn to create more powerful products that can help us all improve our quality of life, which is really what it's all about. So the redox communication, I want to give you an example. You know, I came into learning and testing this product in my practice for things that were hurting people, right? Anything that was uncomfortable, that didn't move well. I tested this because, well, this is what we used to use to improve and support people in their recovery. And we would do this product 3 times in 5 minutes and wait 5 minutes. Probably in that 10-minute period, you know, most people are going to see some kind of a shift in that level of discomfort that they had. And it was how I built my belief on what I had in my hands. And I see some really interesting changes in a 10-minute period. But I will say that this product is just knocking it out of the park. This is actually 6 times stronger. And because it is targeted like laser therapy on that inflammatory signaling pathway, we're seeing a much faster response from most people. And these are some of the examples that I've already seen as we've been using it with people. But I would encourage you, if you haven't had this chance, especially since it's only just been on the market for about 2 weeks, to get hold of the person that's helping you and try this out for yourself, and then have fun and go and put it on everybody you know, and kind of build up your own library of experiences with this, because we're all learning the power of what we have here, even though we know the science behind it. But in practice, it becomes very exciting. So we think of these 2 products as broad spectrum, and we think of this as the targeted product for pure redox. So here's the comparison, just to wrap up on this, that Redox Gold is really going to support all of those kinds of things that we do for exercise, anything that's uncomfortable, muscles, joints, all of those things are really going to relieve tightness and tension. It's also going to prep the body. If you're going to work out, I would do this beforehand. Certainly will alleviate any kind of discomfort, soothe tired, overworked muscles, and provide what we're seeing for most people, but but not always for everyone, because inflammation is really about a fire, and so we just don't know how much is going on underneath the surface and how much you might need to actually shift that. But for most people, it's really a very rapid relief benefit that they're seeing. So we think of this as targeted. Now, we all love the Renew 28 because this is our anti-aging benefit, going to combat the experience of fine lines and wrinkles and cellulite. It primes all of the cells in the body and primes the skin. It's going to help improve internal hydration, elasticity, skin surface renewal. It's going to nourish those skin cells, and you may well find that you're putting these two together for different benefits as you play around with it. And it also encourages that 28-day skin cell turnover. We can think of this as an all-over body skin cell therapy. And so we have two different amazing products there. But our health is, as I said, everything, and it really does start with the liquid. This is a great pack that we have based on the clinical science of what used to be 8 ounces a day. 6 ounces nowadays is just as strong as 8 was years ago because of our improvement in our science. And the Essentials pack provides you with a monthly basis of being able to do 6 ounces on a daily basis. And it gives you a free tube of the Renew 28 plus free shipping. Now, if you add one of these tubes in for the next 3 months on a subscription, it will still also be free shipping, regardless, even if it wasn't the Essentials pack. And so that's a great way to get going on this product. If you want some more examples of benefits, have a look at the gettingyongerclub.com, which Dr. Silverman has. Now, we suggest with the liquid, this is a really important thing. It's going to be a different journey. You're not likely to see, changes happen in seconds or necessarily even in weeks with the liquid, because this is broad spectrum and your body is taking it, directing it where it needs to go. So we insist really as your way to be able to know what your body's doing with this. Benchmark everything in your health before you get going with a liquid. Start by benchmarking where you are on all of these kinds of markers and anything else that you want to track. Repeat that at the end of the week. You'll probably find only about 15% of people have seen something happen in that first week, because this is a broad spectrum and the body is going to use it as it wants to. But it's still working. We know that from our genetic study, it's a 100%. From our blood serum markers, it's 100%. So it's impacting all of us. We just don't always know immediately with the liquid what the body's choosing to do, but it's doing something. And then keep tracking those changes and just watch your journey and know that the body will layer the way in which it reveals how it's using the extra redox potential to support your own internal healing. So replenishing the loss and amplifying the signals will vary from person to person. If you're kind of healthy and you're younger and you're just combating today's loss, 4 ounces a day might well be fine for you, especially if you benchmark and you find that. But, for most of us, especially as we're getting older, we not only need to counteract what's happening today, but kind of make up for all of the stuff that we brought with us as we got older. And so our daily deficiency might be a lot more. If we've got chronic challenges, a lot of us will need to get to this 8 ounces a day in the early 1, 2, or 3 months to really fill that glass up and get a sense of, oh, this is amazing. Our body's really been able to do this, this, and this. And then we can find out, where's our perfect spot? Yours might be different from mine for sure. And that's why it is very customized as to how we do it. People who have very serious deficiencies can sometimes they choose to actually drink a whole bottle a day. That's because it's totally non-toxic. You can't be allergic to it, and it's not going to interfere with any medication, but sometimes they feel like they need that much support. I want to show you this because when we interrupt the breakdown of aging from the inside with the liquid, we are going to see examples of what that looks like. And I say that this is why it's the single most important product I've ever worked with, because Rosie's journey is a remarkable journey. Right, backwards in time from 84 to 91. And I will say there is no other product that I could possibly use that could actually take somebody who's in their 80s with a huge amount of oxidative stress evidenced within and without, and actually watch them turn back the clock and hit in their early 90s and look at least 10 years younger than they were in their 80s. I have no other product that could do that. But that's what I said at the beginning, because there's no other product that contains the redox signaling. If you want to know more about the biology, go to redoxscience.com. If you want to hear more stories and experiences, we've got other resources for you. And we're going to move to the ethos part of it with Lynn. Let me just stop share here and bring Lynn in, because I want you to talk about what we always think of as just equally as important as the product itself.
Thank you. It is, to me, I know, and to you, and anyone that's been around ASEA, I think that inflection point that Dr. Hoffman talked about with Vertus Norton, the founder of this company, was really critical in not just the product coming to market, but also the culture of the company. You know, he had an opportunity when he acquired the technology to sell it to a pharmaceutical company. And he was a business guy. You know, he spent his entire career in Fortune 50, $32 billion company. He did a lot of consulting with CEOs in that Fortune 50 space. So for him, it was a business play. But while he was talking to this pharmaceutical company, he had this focus group of friends, neighbors, church members, all trying this product, who had varying levels of dis-ease, right? Varying levels of conditions and challenges that they were dealing with their health. 6 of those people, it was critical enough that they'd been told to get their affairs in order. So they're kind of in the background getting as much of this liquid as they wanted. He's chatting with the scientists from some major pharmaceutical companies, and one of them offered him a very large sum of money. They said, "We are really impressed with what you have. We want it. We don't want you to talk to anybody else." And he went back and he looked at this focus group, and those 6 people who had been so challenged with their health seemed to be thriving. Those 40 people had been sharing it with friends and family, and had turned into 120 people now using it. And the caveat that the pharmaceutical company had for him was that if he took the check, he basically had to walk away from everything. And all those people had to come off of the product, including himself and his family. And they had also been seeing benefits. And he said to him, you know, there's 6 people that I believe are walking the planet now because of this. I can't do that. And they said, look, if you want the money, you walk away. People deal with their health in ways they'll figure it out. And he said, I can't do that. He said, morally, ethically, I cannot take this away from them. And he turned down that check. And it was legacy money, what they were offering him. He was 69 years old at the time, and he founded this company called ASEA at the age of 69. And he decided that this was going to be his legacy, his gift to humanity, because he really understood this. Before anybody else had any idea what this was, he just knew in his heart this was something big. And so he started this company called ASEA. He was trying to figure out, you know, how do I bring something to market that nobody's ever heard of Redox? And if you look at the bottle, it says sodium chloride and water, right, which is saline, salt water. How do I bring something like this to market? And he chose, having been in a business where he brought a lot of iconic products to market, he knew it couldn't just be out on a shelf at a health food store or somewhere, because all of us read labels, right? And we don't understand redox. So when you just see salt water, most people think, I'll just go mix it up in my kitchen, right? But as you heard Dr. Hoffman say, there's a lot more to creating redox out of sodium chloride and water. So he opted for this distribution method of word of mouth, network marketing. And knowing that this industry doesn't always have a great reputation. So that was another thing he wanted to be sure that he did with ASEA, was to transform the industry and really bring it up, so that there was a lot of transparency in it and a lot of integrity in it. And that's what he has done. And this culture of ASEA is something that I remember the first time hearing them talk about the ethos and the culture. It was an all-day event, and I was just amazed that this company, this corporation, spent 8 hours talking about the heart and soul of the company. They were talking about things like putting people and purpose and principle ahead of their own egos and ahead of economics. Now, obviously, every business has to make money, But because they're not beholden to shareholders, it's a private company, privately owned company, they can make decisions that really benefit people more so than profit sometimes. And we've seen them do that. They just did it with the Redox Gold that Dr. Hoffman was talking about. Over and over in the 11 years I've been associated with them, I've watched them make those decisions. And it's so heartwarming because in this world that we live in, there's so much corporate greed. And so often it's about the bottom line that the people are forgotten. And they are all about the people. You know, if this is something that touches your heart and you've thought of other people in your life who need to know about this, or if this is something that maybe you see a bigger vision and you really want to step into it and bring this to the world in a big way, um, it's not about transactions. It's not about just going and selling somebody a bottle of ASEA or a case of ASEA or whatever it is, the Redox Gold. It is about transforming other people's lives, really creating these relationships with people, getting to know them, what their needs are, and just serving them. You know, is this something that can help you or is it not? Well, we all know it can help everybody, but you've got to help people see how this is going to help them. And I love that this is so human based. And like Dr. Hoffman said, this is why, honestly, this is why I still do this. I don't have to be doing this. I will always drink the product and always use the products, but it is something that the community of people have become like a second family. I see so many people on here who have become very, very dear friends. And it's like we've got this mission together of truly bettering people's lives and being a force for good in the world, which is what their mission statement is. So if this is something that, you know, touches your heart, whether it's now or after you really understand what this is, we would love for you to join us because there's a lot of people in this world who are struggling, whether it's financially with their health, whatever it is. And this might be the link or the missing link that they need from a lot of perspectives. So Carolyn, I'm going to turn this back to you.
That's wonderful. Let me just stop record for a sec. And there we go.